What's up everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in. For today's video, we're going to be installing a hood strut conversion on the 240SX. In other words, we're ditching the prop rod. A couple questions I'm sure everybody's asking themselves is, what's the point of getting rid of a perfectly good prop rod? And why is he not making engine swap videos? Well, perfectly good explanation for the latter. I ran into some snags with the lift install. Hopefully it's all going to be ironed out next week, fingers crossed, but I am filming a whole video on that process, so stay tuned for that. As far as getting rid of the prop rod, it's really a question of why not. In my research, I have found so many things that you can do to these cars because obviously it's a very versatile and very popular platform for a lot of different reasons. But what some people may not know is that there's also a lot of off-the-wall things that you can do that don't have anything to do with performance, but at the end of the day, it all helps your car stand out from the rest. It's even better when that stuff doesn't cost a ton of money and is super simple to put together. When I came across this hood strut conversion from Phase 2 Motor Trend, I thought it'd be pretty fun to shoot a quick video on it. At the end of the day, there is nothing wrong with a traditional prop rod. It's simple and effective. Many cars have used them, and many cars still use them today. There's several benefits that come with ditching the prop rod, but at the end of the day, it's all about personal preference. There's a big convenience factor built in there, so obviously it'll make the hood a lot easier to open because you don't have to fiddle with that rod. The struts will evenly distribute the weight of the hood, and when you go to a car show and you want to pop your hood and show off that beautiful engine bay, you can do so without having a big rod hanging out in front. Also, just a quick FYI, these hood struts can only be used on steel or aluminum hoods. They're not meant to be used on carbon fiber or fiberglass hoods. Phase 2 offers a couple different styles of these struts: Carbon Series and Black Series. I opted for the Black Series just to give everything more of a stock appearance after everything was said and done, but the Carbon Series is pretty cool too, especially if you have more carbon fiber throughout your car. Another pretty cool thing is that, along with the strut conversion up front, they also make replacement struts for the rear, so my OEM ones are starting to get a little bit weak, so we can go ahead and replace those as well, and everything will match. Installation seems very straightforward. Both kits come with detailed instructions, so that's nice, no guesswork there. Not to mention all of the necessary hardware. This in particular is for the conversion kit up front. As far as tools, all you're going to need is a 10 and a 12mm socket, but if you want to be super precise, you can get your service manual, find the exact torque specs, and of course, have your torque wrench ready. So before we start taking all of this stuff apart, we want to first double check and make sure that the hood is properly supported by the prop rod, because we want to leave this in place until everything is finished. Goodness forbid the hood were to come loose and fall on you mid-installation. That'd feel pretty bad, so everything looks pretty good here. Now we can go ahead and start undoing some bolts. First things first, we have to remove 4 bolts. The first 2 help secure the front fenders to the chassis, and they're 10mm in size. The other 2 help secure the hood to the hinges. Make sure you only remove the upper ones. They're 12mm in size. After that, we can go ahead and grab some of our new hardware. There's adapter brackets specific to each side, as well as a couple washers. You reuse the existing bolts and put it back in the upper holes. Then take the other set of hardware. That's what you would use to secure the lower portion. So put the little studs in the fenders and tighten them down accordingly. Now it's time to remove the foam packaging from the struts and assemble them. There's these little connectors that you have to attach up top. Once everything's secure, those connectors can be firmly pressed against the upper studs. Before we can connect the lower studs though, we actually have to raise up the hood about ½ an inch. So before we do that, we can go ahead and partially connect the passenger side by just repeating the same process. Use the old bolt as well as the new hardware, and again just give it a nice firm press up top and lay the strut down. With both struts halfway connected, you can drop the prop rod, raise the hood up about ½ an inch, and go ahead and secure the lower portions onto the studs with a nice firm press. The nice thing about the adapter brackets is that you do have some adjustability, so once everything is nice and secure, just raise and lower the hood a bunch of times and check for clearance. Of course, move the brackets around and adjust accordingly. If you remember at the beginning of the video, I mentioned that all you need to do all of this stuff is a 10mm and a 12mm socket. Well, I stand corrected. I realized once I started doing all of the final tightening that the socket would not fit over the little stud right here, so had to come make a special trip to the shop, grab my wrench set and a 10mm wrench, which got these nice and tight, so we're good to go. I thought this was pretty neat too. The hood actually goes up about 1/2 inch higher than it did before, so you get a little bit more clearance. Because when it comes to swapping this engine, you know, the easiest thing to do is just to take the hood off and you get all sorts of clearance for, you know, pulling the whole powertrain out. Now, I'm not really sure that you need to take the hood off. It's got a lot of clearance just the way it is, but, you know, we'll see when we dive into it. These things turned out fantastic. I am super happy with the results. They look like they could have come from the factory and, you know, they work as good as they look. The full range of motion feels great. Nice and fluid. The hood stays even, nothing abnormal. Very, very nice. I'll end up taking the prop rod out at some point. Yeah, it's not in the way of anything right now, so I'm not too worried about it, but there's a couple retaining clips to pop out, and then you have the metal piece to finagle around that portion that's secured to the chassis. I'm actually thinking about cutting this off, and then, you know, when the engine bay is repainted and everything's getting worked on, you won't even know that the prop rod was there, which will, you know, definitely give it a cleaner look. I haven't noticed any clearance issues or anything like that. I have opened this hood time and time again, testing things out and whatnot, and, you know, the fitment's pretty much perfect. If you didn't already notice, as the hood closes, the struts compress and lie flat right on top of this inner fender lip right there. You can actually see a portion of it. I would not that you should anyway, slam the hood just because you're dealing with compressed gases and all of that stuff. I would just lower it down gently to where it catches right here, and then just give a nice firm press and lock the hood down. And there you go. Hood strut install complete. Now we just got to move towards the back and replace those rear struts. Replacing the rear struts is just as simple as it sounds. Once you open up the hatch, if you still have your privacy cover, you can lower that down just to give you some extra room to work. Now the upper and lower bolts are 12mm. The one up top you're going to have to use an open-ended wrench, but you can use a socket wrench in the very bottom. Make sure that the hatch is secure before you undo the first strut. Because the hatch is heavy, you don't want it to lean to one side and possibly crack that glass. One of my camera tripods did the trick. Now because these are just replacement struts, we don't have to fiddle with any adapter brackets or anything like that. We just have to attach the connector end, put in the appropriate studs, and tighten them all down accordingly. With that done, just like the front, give both ends a nice firm press to make sure that the spring clips engage. Just repeat the process for the other side and you're done. Now with my temporary support out of the way, we can go ahead and give this thing a test drive. All right. Very smooth, just like the front. The biggest things, or the differences here with adding the new hardware, is that the hatch has less of a tendency to just fall down right about here. You still have to kind of push it, and it's also a lot easier to open because this is a heavy hatch. This takes some of that load off, which makes it a lot easier to operate. One more quick test, and that's opening the trunk from in here and actually opening it from a fully closed position. Awesome. Very, very happy. Well, everyone, that pretty much concludes this video. I hope y'all enjoyed. Do you want to see more simple installs like this? If so, you know what to do. Post your ideas in the comment section below. If you haven't subscribed already, consider doing so. There's always a lot more where that came from. And don't forget to hit that little notification bell so you can get notified of new uploads. Don't forget to leave a like below, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.